So this is my Benchmade Griptialian, and this is my work EDC knife. I carry it around in my front right pocket, and generally when I'm in the shop, this knife is with me. I like to keep it good and sharp, so it's always ready to do tasks. But the other day, I broke my clip off. I was able to salvage this part that was still fixed to the frame with the screws, and I thought, you know what, I wonder how hard it is to build your own pocket clip. I thought this Sawzall blade, this old Sawzall blade, would be a fairly decent piece of steel, hopefully enough spring to it. It's 36 thousandths of an inch thick, or about 0.92 millimeters. I thought, you know what, this might just be a good candidate to make a pocket clip. Let's find out. So the first thing I needed to do was make this into a usable stock. So I ground off the little tang that is used to put it into the Sawzall. I ground the teeth off, kind of got rid of those, and really I'm trying to end up with a nice piece of steel that I can accurately draw lines from, take measurements off of. And so we're just making sure both sides are perfectly straight. And then the other thing I'd like to do with this is get rid of any paint, and again, any tiny little profiles that were from the teeth. I wanted to grind those off and essentially try to come up with the most uniform piece of steel when we get started. Now I am using a 2x72 belt grinders to do this, but when you think about it, this could be done with any 1x30 or even a woodworking belt sander if that's what you have. So just to help us out, we're going to put a blue layout die on there so we can see what lines we need to mark out. And the first thing I want to do is give myself a nice perpendicular line to the stock, and that will be the plane that we want to put these two holes on. I measured the center to center distance, or you can measure from like the same side of one hole to the other. And I basically just scribed two really light lines on that center line that we have, and that's where we're going to put our center holes. Now to get these holes marked out and center punched very accurately, I'm using an optical center punch. So it's got this piece of plastic with crosshairs that are dead center in this hole, so we can line them up with the exact point that we want to put our mark into. We pull out that plastic piece, and then there is a precision fit center punch that slides into that hole, and you hold that down nice and tight without moving, hit it with a hammer, and bada boom, bada bing, you've got very nice, accurate center holes that you can drill. Just like that. Pop the other one for the other side, and we will be good to go. And then we'll double check, and that looks pretty darn good to me. So I found a drill bit in my stash of drill bits that would work roughly for the same size. That was the nice part about having that other clip part, is that I could just, get the drill bit that fit nice and tight in there. And I had some issues drilling this second hole. I think too much heat had generated. You can kind of see the heat pattern growing on the steel. I've got a tip later on the video on drilling small holes like this in spring steel. It was incredible the difference that it made. But this step here, what I'm doing is giving myself some grid lines. So I measured like from one edge of the hole, and I'd kind of scribe that all the way along down the stock. That way, whatever profile I end up making this clip, I will have a nice straight line to take reference lines off of and stuff like that. And then to come up with a profile for the top portion, I just put those screws up through the back, held it down in place, and basically just traced this one out. That way it looks very much like the stock unit. Now I'm kind of trying to figure out roughly how long I want this to be, how I want my bends to be, where I want it to curve and stuff like that. And then I want to give it a slightly tapered profile, so I'm going to give myself some markings, and essentially I'll be drawing diagonal lines, just kind of free-flowing it, kind of figuring out. And the nice thing with these lines here is that I can do this marking on one side, and then I can transfer it to the other side, and it's going to be fairly even along the center line of this clip. It just allows you to keep everything nice and even and concentric from one side to the other. Obviously, as we're grinding this, we're going to be a little bit more free-flowing and kind of, do it by eyeball, but it's always nice to have these set of lines that you can actually work to. And here I just kind of drew in what I thought the end of the clip should be, but then I thought this kind of looked a little bit short, and when I held it up to the knife, indeed, I definitely want a little bit more of a pocket clip than that. So I did a few more grid lines a little farther down and kind of redrew in some of those tapers and profiles. But the reality is that it's kind of hard to know exactly what it will look like when it's all said and done. So I figured the best thing to do is just kind of get some lines there, start heading down that road, and we'll kind of see what takes shape. We don't know for sure, but let's just start grinding in this profile. And again, I'm doing this on a 2x72 belt grinder with, all the latest and greatest abrasives. But a project for yourself, if you're in your garage and you'd like to make your own pocket clip. The materials that I use in this video are very attainable, no fancy heat treating equipment. We'll kind of see later on in the video, but you could do everything that I'm doing here on a simple, a 1x30 or some other type of a woodworking saw that you had or sander that you have. Really, this was kind of meant to be a project that, I was thinking a pocket clip, the first thing I thought of was let's get some titanium. But then I thought, wait a minute, I want to make a pocket clip out of materials that I can find in my house. So that's kind of what this whole project was, trying to see how well this would actually work. Ultimately, I know there's probably a lot of science and theory behind making and designing pocket clips that I'm completely glossing over, but what the heck, this is a learning experiment for me, and hopefully it can be for you as well. Now, one thing I'll note, even though I do have these lines here, once I get close to them, I find that sometimes they can be a little bit distracting. So there's times when I'll actually like to flip it over and kind of look at the whole organic shape without any lines drawn it, because sometimes those lines, they just kind of distract you. And I always find that to get the very end of it, the very final profile, I need to be looking at the other side of it. And it just kind of seems to be a little bit clearer, how even it is and how nice it looks in its natural state without any grid lines on it. But I think that's looking fairly close. Not an overly complicated shape here. I wasn't going for anything fancy. Just trying to sort of replicate what I remember the other one looking like. The other one actually broke off in my shipping container shop, and I heard the ping, and it went flying behind one of the shelves I have in there. I went back 3 times trying to find that clip, and I just couldn't find it. Obviously, if we had that piece, I'd probably just lay that on here and kind of trace that out so we could get something fairly similar. But this is kind of going from memory, and then from what lines I decided I thought might work. But we've got the basic profile of it all done. And so now what we're going to do is bend in the clip. I'm doing a deep carry clip. And so you'll notice I ground a little bit of a radius onto this piece of 1/4-inch steel. And that is just to kind of start the initial bend. I've got another piece of steel. You'll kind of see it coming up here that I used for more of the fold over process. And, I made a few changes to this too, and we'll get to that later on in the video. But I just thought maybe if I had something with a little bit of a gentle radius to kind of start this curve. And then here's that second piece. I kind of ground in a bit of an angle there because I wanted the clip not to be perfectly round, but kind of match that profile. So it's kind of sloped. And I'm just kind of finagling with the tools that I have, vice gripping in place, using a MAP gas torch. For material this thin, you could definitely just use a regular propane torch. This is more of a brazing torch. It just heats it up a little bit quicker, that's all. But just kind of, nothing fancy here, nothing complicated. Just kind of like bending it around, seeing what I think would work, eyeballing it as I go. And then bringing it into the vise and using it to kind of squish it and smush it, kind of help finish off those bends. Ideally, I want it to be a little bit overbent so that once I lock those screws down, it's going to be putting pressure against the body of the knife. But I don't want to go too far either, right? You don't want it to be too tight and put too much strain on those screws and also have way too tight of a clip in there. But I kind of finagle it and adjust it, heat it up, bend it to where I think is going to work. And then this last part is just going to be a little bit of a flare so that the clip at the very end isn't sitting against the body of the knife, but rather it kind of kicks out a little bit so that it's got a little place to catch your, the side of your pocket. So you can just kind of slide it straight in there and you don't actually have to like open up the clip, but it's just got enough clearance there where you just push it down and then the outside of the clip goes the outside of your pants and the knife goes into your pocket. And again here, just fine tuning, eyeballing it where I think would work and just adjusting a little tweakage here and there. Now, this is the very first time I've ever tried making a pocket clip, so I really don't have any experience to pull from. But at the same time, I think it's a fairly simple project. I did a little quick quench there in water. Now, my idea, once I was done this, was to actually heat treat it properly and then come up with some type of a finish. But for now, I thought, you know what? It looks pretty good, kind of eyeballing it on the edge of the vise there to see if I've got the clearances that I want. And the one thing I realized that I'm going to have troubles putting these screws in, so I took my diamond burr and my Fordham tool, my rotary tool. These are actually like chainsaw sharpening burrs, so they're fairly inexpensive. They're actually fairly easy to get at your local hardware store, and it does a good job at cutting this, I'll call air quotes, hardened steel. I'm not entirely sure how hardened it is, but this little diamond file here did a great job. All we need is a little tiny clearance, and it also kind of adds to the aesthetic. It kind of looks, I don't know, kind of looks a little more interesting, I think, but I just put enough in there so that the screws would pop in and out easy, and called it good. With all that done and out of the way, it's time to test fit this to the knife. It looks promising. It looks promising. So the idea is that this should be fairly similar to not the exact shape, but I'm using 2 screws like you would with a deep carry clip on the Griptialian. A side note, my Griptialian actually came with the standard carry clip, which left about ½ inch of the knife sticking up above your pocket. It was kind of annoying. And at the time, Benchmade had this program where you could just ask for a deep carry clip and they would send you one for free. I'm not entirely sure if they do that anymore, but what do you guys think? I think it looks all right. I think it turned out okay. Definitely going to be functional. Oh no. That is not functional at all. My reaction I think seems fairly calm. I was totally shocked when this happened. Kind of frustrated actually. I was pretty torqued, but you know what? We got to learn. So what else could I use? What else do I have that's maybe a little bit more springy of a spring steel? Well, I thought, one of these drywall putty knives might work. Why not? So I took this thing and knocked the handle off of it very quickly, very crudely, laid out some of the templates that I needed to get the shape that I wanted, and did the exact same process that we just saw, but on this type of steel. Now, the one tip that I have for drilling this type of steel, before I was going really fast, like the air quotes proper speed for this size of a drill bit, but if you're drilling something like spring steel, the slower the better. So this is the same size drill bit, this is a brand new sharp drill bit, and I'm drilling at 100 RPM here in my milling machine. I did have to jump to my milling machine because that's the only drill press device thingy that I have that goes this slow. But you can see how well it's actually cutting in there. I'm using a fairly decent pressure and then also having a solid steel backer. So I've just got a piece of flat bar steel stock in there so that there's no deflection. And I think that made all the difference. Between that and having a really low speed, which is actually, it's kind of against conventional wisdom for cutting speed for that size of a drill bit, but I was able to drill all of these holes in here without heating up my bits at all. So we did the same thing here, roughed out the profile, and I did make a mistake with this second one, and second one because, believe it or not, I ended up having to make 3 of these. You see right here is my mistake. I forgot that radius portion, and my initial bend was way too tight, and I was trying to stretch the outside of that material more than it could. It didn't have enough elasticity, and also I think I had improperly heated it, because you can see right there, I had a crack developed, and I wanted to investigate that crack. And so if we just kind of go back, after I have my hissy fit, we'll kind of go back a few frames where I start the bend here. First of all, I should have better heat right at that sharp edge, and that sharp edge I think was my main downfall. That is way too tight of a turn, and when you think about bending steel like this, the inside of that curve that we're making has to shrink, and the outside has to stretch. But there's only so much that can actually stretch before you push it, to its absolute limits. And if you see right here, if you kind of look right at that sharp point where I start hammering it here, boom, right there. Kind of zoom in a little bit. You see that tiny little fracture starting to take shape? Right there. That's where the problem was. So back to the drawing board, a brand new clip, the third clip. They say the third time's a charm. Let's hope that's the case. But you notice I put in a really large radius on that same piece of 1/4 inch stock. I mean, I really put a radius in on both sides, and I thought, you know what? I think if I can take a little bit more time, do a slightly slower bend, It's not going to be as tight of a radius, I don't think. I just think the material that I'm working with is limited. Obviously, I've kind of pushed it past its capabilities, but I thought let's make a slightly larger radius, work a little bit better at getting some heat. And you notice how I'm not really forcing it down there. Right now we'll come back in there and kind of be a little more gentle and gingerly with it. But ultimately, we're not really folding it over on itself as tight as I did with the second clip. And again, I kind of switched up my methods. I thought I wanted to be able to control the heat better and get more heat. And when I was up against that piece of 1/4 inch steel was actually sucking a lot of the heat away. So by just having it out in the air, I can actually put the heat where I want it, make sure everything's nice and hot, which I think was a very critical step to the failure of the second one, and probably the first one as well. I think I probably had a lot of heat stress in there and different things going on within the steel. So this time I mostly did all the final forming and stuff just with 2 pairs of pliers, using a little piece of steel here and there, kind of adjusting it, so on and so forth. And once I got a shape that I was fairly happy with, again, I needed to put the clearance in for these screw holes. This time I did it slightly differently as well. I have this block that I made so I can actually rigidly fix my Fordham. And this was actually really nice because I could line up looking through the screw hole. I could line up exactly where I want that relief to be, and it was a lot more controlled, having holding the workpiece itself rather than holding the tool. So this actually worked out really well. It made for a very easy way to accurately line up these little relief holes for the screws. And with the final profile of this thing done, it has come time to heat treat. And I wanted to keep true to form as kind of a simple DIY type project. I used 2 torches here. These are 2 MapGat torches. Again, I didn't throw it in my digital kiln because I thought, I don't know, I think this should work. And I just tried to get the heat as consistent and even as possible, like a nice bright orange, yellowy kind of. And then I quenched it in canola oil. Now, obviously, this to me is a mystery steel. I don't know the composition. I don't know what it's made of. And I don't know if this was the right way to heat treat it, but I just figured that this is a reliable method that I've used for many different steels and had good results. So I thought, you know what, let's just give it a shot. So with that done, I cleaned a little bit off on the belt grinder just so I could see the color of the metal, the nice shiny steel. And then to temper it, I just did one quick little, and we'll call it a temper cycle, where I just went with a torch and got a light straw color. In theory, that should be around 400 degrees Fahrenheit. Again, this is not a scientific process for me. This is very bush league kind of just like letting it rip and rolling with it. Much less technical than I am when I'm making my knives, but this was a clip for me. And ultimately, I didn't have any information on this steel that I'm using, so I thought, you know what, let's just give this a shot. Now, I'll let you know, after using it for about a week, it is holding up very well. I think we do have a decent heat treat on it, and I'm going to say that loosely. I'm not saying this is the correct way to do it necessarily, but so far, it's working. Now, I wanted to dress this up just a little bit. I wanted to add some type of a color, ideally get it dark, and then also add some corrosion resistance. So I took my sandblast cabinet. You could just use a wire wheel and a grinder or something too. And I just basically knocked off all of the colors, the scale that was kind of built up. You can see that straw color there of the clip. I want to get that back to shiny. And then also the inside, the parts that I couldn't reach when I was cleaning it on the belt grinder, I want to get all the black, that scale after you heat treat it and dunk it in oil. Basically, I just want to get it all nice and cleaned up with nothing on the steel, because the finish we're going to use is just a super blue. This is like gun bluing. You can buy it at outdoor sporting goods stores. Pretty simple, and it's just an easy way to do it, and it actually puts a fairly decent finish that is rust proof. I do know that these spring steels aren't like a stainless because, if you don't look after them, the one that I had actually had rust spots on it when I took it apart, so I figured this would actually help to prevent rusting and also just kind of make it look a little bit better. And then to neutralize this, when I was done, I just sprayed it and wiped it down with Windex for the ammonia that's in it. So with that clip done, we're going to mount it onto the knife, and then we'll see what type of retention it has, and hopefully it doesn't break. Well, so far so good. Every time I went to flick it, I felt like I was kind of pushing my luck. I think this one's actually a little bit fatter than the original one, but it has a lot of spring pressure on there. I'm actually really impressed. Definitely way more than the original Benchmade did. And while I had the knife apart, I actually took everything apart, greased up my bearings. That's why you can see the little lube right there. But all in all, I'm really impressed with how this turned out. Better than I thought it would. Then again, I guess it took 2 failures to get one good one that worked. But thought I'd share this with you guys. I hope you enjoyed it. If you've ever considered making your own custom carry clip for whatever knife you have, it's actually not that bad. And it's a really great learning process. You know, just through this little thing, I have learned a lot about steels. Even though they're mystery steels to me, I know how to treat some of those things, how to drill through them. And, you know, just the idea that goes into bending metal and trying to create these curves and what's too much and what's not enough and the heat and stuff is actually a really great project for myself, and hopefully you enjoyed following along. I want to thank you so much for watching this video. If you liked it, please consider giving it a thumbs up. If you haven't already, consider subscribing to the channel. And as always, I thank you so much for watching. Cheers.